roast and just go right from frozen right to cooked, that's another appropriate method. You should never really thaw at room temperature because it allows bacteria to multiply rapidly. Keeping that food in that danger zone is what it is. It's the danger zone. That is the area where bacteria grow the most rapidly. So you want to make sure that you're keeping food out of the range between 4 degrees Celsius and 60 degrees Celsius. Now there's specific rules about how you can handle that and how fast things have to move through the danger zones, and we'll cover that in a little bit. But essentially you want to keep food out of the 4 degrees to 60 degrees range. Food should always be cooked to a safe internal temperature so it kills all those harmful pathogens that might be lurking inside. So different meats have different susceptibilities to pathogens, and each one requires a different internal temperature to be sure the pathogens are killed. So you should always be putting your whole poultry, so that's like your whole chickens, to 82 degrees Celsius. Any food mixtures where you have mixed meats should be around 74 degrees Celsius. Pork and other ground meats not containing poultry can be down to 71 degrees Celsius, and that includes burgers. I like to always think of burgers done at 71. That's a pretty good measure. And everything else is pretty much 74 with a couple of limits. And fish can be cooked a little bit less, to 70 degrees. So, I mean, there's not much difference between 71 and 70, but you can get away with cooking your fish a little bit lower. Now, the temperature should be verified with a properly calibrated thermometer, and temperatures should be sustained for at least 15 seconds to make sure that all of the food has been heated evenly. You should always use a thermometer to verify your holding temperatures. You have to make sure, first of all, that it's reached safe internal temperatures, and then any potentially hazardous food should be kept at or above 60 degrees Celsius. So again, on the upper end of that range, or cold food should be held below 4 degrees Celsius. So again, the lower end of that range. You want to keep it out of that 4 degrees to 60 degrees danger range. And you want to regularly monitor that with a thermometer and make sure that you're recording those readings and a log kept. Again, that goes back to our HACCP audits, and we want to make sure that our critical control points are within their critical limits. The cooling process involves properly cooling food to about from 60 degrees to 20 degrees within 2 hours, and 20 degrees to 4 degrees within the next 4 hours. So bacteria is really going to do really well in that area between 60 degrees and 20 degrees, because that's the optimal body temperature. The human's core temperature is around 36 degrees, so that's kind of our optimal range as well. Below that, they're going to be slowed a little bit between 20 degrees and 4 degrees. The temperatures are a little cooler and bacteria slowed a little bit, but not enough to justify keeping it there long term. There are several methods that you can use to cool your food quickly after it's been cooked. You can use an ice wand, which is a hollow mace-shaped plastic tool filled with water that gets frozen. So as you're stirring, that cold kind of dissipates throughout your soup or your food pros. That's good for soups or stews or any kind of fluid product. Another option is you can put things into ice baths. So you can put the container itself into an ice bath and continually replace or add ice. You can add ice directly to some items if it's not really important if it gets watered down or not. But either way, you should always try to put your food into shallower, smaller containers because it adds more surface area and allows more contact area with the cold air. So your things tend to cool down a lot more quickly and effectively, and it eliminates hot spots and warm spots in the core where bacteria might grow for a little while. Food should always be reheated to the original cooking temperature before it gets put back into hot holding, and you should always be verifying the temperatures with a probe thermometer. And you should only really be using approved proper cooking methods like your grill, your stove, your oven, or a boiler. You shouldn't really be using the warmer to bring your food up to temperature because they usually take too long and they don't necessarily always reach the peak temperature. Some inappropriate reheating methods, like using your warming equipment or holding ovens or steam tables or your soup urns, again, they're not designed for doing that job, so they should only really be used for maintaining a temperature and not for reheating. So things should only be put there after they've been brought up to the regular internal temperature for at least 15 seconds. So when you're displaying and monitoring your foods, you want to make sure that the temperature controls in that monitor are kept out of the danger zone. So again, that range between 4 to 6 degrees, 60 degrees, sorry. Thermometers should be used regularly to make sure your food remains within that safe temperature range of below 4 degrees or above 60 degrees as may be needed. And you want to make sure you're keeping your logs. Your food should not be displayed for longer than, say that 6-hour time frame. You should try to get them back in the fridge or covered or frozen or something within that time frame. And even when food is kept out of the danger zone for an extended period of time, oxygen can really start to degrade your food rapidly. So it really is best practice to not keep the food out for as long as possible. You want to get that put away as quickly as you can. When you're receiving goods, they should be inspected for your quality and safety. We're going to cover this a little bit later in a later chapter. It includes checking the condition of products and verifying their sources. Spoiled or damaged items should be rejected when they get there. But the main important thing is you want to check for this chapter is you want to check the temperature of the food to make sure it was kept and received at the appropriate temperature. Hopefully your truck driver has kept a running log and knows what the fridges were at. All you can do is check when the food gets there, but you want to try to make sure when the food arrives that it is at the appropriate temperature. Food should be stored at the proper temperatures for what they're needed during transport and in the facility. You should keep your accurate records of shipments, and they should be tracked so that you can make sure you know where things came from if there was a problem. Storage areas should be left free, and they shouldn't really accumulate various types of products. Everything should be kept where it needs to be, whether it's room temperature storage, refrigeration, or frozen, or any non-food items put in a separate storage space away from the food. Food should be stored at least 15 centimeters above the ground to prevent things being contaminated. It also helps you to organize and clean and look under shelves and make sure that there are no rodents around. Your thermometers should be, again, used in your storage area to make sure that temperatures are in the range where they should be. Again, your fridge should be at the most 4 degrees Celsius, and your freezer should be around 18 degrees or lower. So essentially, accurate temperature control is one of the most important aspects of food safety. Regular equipment maintenance, correct food handling, and adherence to food safety guidelines are important, but maintaining your temperatures and making sure food's not left out for too long is the most crucial aspect. So you're going to make sure that you are maintaining your temperature controls, you're keeping things clean and keeping your records, and that you're going to follow all the proper procedures to make sure that the food doesn't stay contaminated and is kept at the proper temperature for the appropriate times.